So I'm Diana. I'm a neuro NP. I've been a neuro NP, inpatient, outpatient kind of blend for about 13 years now. I am now a nurse mentor, nurse and APP mentor for about 3 years. So Self-Care Catalyst on Instagram, or Catalyst for Self-Care is my handle. That is where I kind of live and where all my content is. But I'm a content creator, speaker. Obviously, I'm here and I speak for other whatever engagements, nursing schools, you name it, I've spoken at it. Writer, I write for some blogs, and I'm a mom. I have 2 kids, and I still work pretty much full time, but it's really fun. I love mentoring other nurses and NPs. I absolutely love connecting with you guys through social media and creating content really aimed to keep burnout at bay and empower you to put yourself first, which is what you're doing tonight, which is awesome. So since 2014, which is when I personally burned out pretty hardcore, when I was inpatient neuro, I've really personally taken the leap headfirst for many reasons, but really because I really never wanted that to happen again. Burning out is such a terrible feeling. It's so invasive. It affects your relationships. It affects your own self-confidence. It affects your self-esteem. It affects your sleep. It affects your body. It's a terrible feeling. And I vowed to myself after it happened, I never wanted to have it happen again. So I kind of went headfirst into my own personal development. I worked with mentors. I read all the books. I listened to all the podcasts, like all these things over time. And I personally believe that my superpower is taking information and breaking it down and making it super accessible, cutting out the fluff, making it very clear for you guys so you can benefit from the things that I've learned over time. So that's what I'm here to do, is to kind of take complex ideas, and there's so much information, it's like the infobesity, so much information out there, and just like bringing it in, take the most important things and make it super accessible for you. So when I talk about self-care, it's not just about bubble baths and face masks and all the things. It's really about like setting boundaries and advocating for yourself, and having a life outside of work and really living more than you work, which is what I'm all about. So this is all about no fluff, just fun, and really like actionable tools that will help you really move the needle forward when trying to live more than you work, which is really the goal. So again, early on, I suffered from imposter syndrome. I think a lot of us suffer from that as new grads. Imposter syndrome is just that idea that we don't know enough, we're not enough. We're like, who are we to even be there in the first place? Like, why did they hire me? What is even happening? How am I going to do this? I don't know anything. Like, what's happening? She knows so much more than me. Why did I get hired? It's that sort of feeling. We all have struggled with that. And that's really rooted in fear and poor self-confidence. As nurses, a lot of us struggle with identity. So a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight is about identity and who you are as a human being, not what you do in your job or your jobs in life as a parent or a friend or a sister, but it's really about who you be versus what you do. And knowing that you really truly have an identity outside of your role as a nurse, a nursing professional, whatever role in healthcare that you serve, you are more than whatever that role is. And it's about identifying what things about you are your secret sauce, what absolutely lights you up, and what your life outside of nursing gets to look like, because you ultimately have the power to choose what that looks like. So, which is incredibly exciting. It can be scary, but when you breathe into that fear, it's really just excitement because you get to pick, you get to decide. So also I suffered from comparison syndrome, which again is like rooted in this imposter, poor self-confidence, where you're looking at other people, and fear, right? Fear of not being enough, fear of letting the team down, fear of being like a terrible nurse practitioner in my new job. I think we've all had those fears, like, oh my gosh, like what if I this, what if I that, what if I do this wrong, what if I do this right? And it's like, I think it's right, but it's not actually right. Or what if I rub people the wrong way? Or what if people don't like me? There's all these things that come up when it comes to fear. But unfortunately, a lot of these things like imposter syndrome and other things force us into overwork and overgiving because we're trying sometimes to overcompensate for these things, which I'm guilty of. I did that myself back in 2010 to 2014. And the problem is like those drive burnout because we sometimes overcommit, we overextend ourselves, we don't have realistic expectations for ourselves because again, we view others' opinion or what the people around us are thinking of us as more than our own feelings about ourselves. So that was definitely true for me. I was a yes person, 100%. I'll admit it, 100%. I was a yes person. I was like, yes, I got you. I got you. I got you. Like, yeah, you want me to work 12 in a row? Sure, I got you. But the problem is eventually I did burn out. It took me by surprise because I didn't really know what that looked like at the time. So that is why I am here, because I very much feel that we should all be aware of where we're at. We should all know what burnout looks like, and we should all be empowered to keep it at bay with these various techniques, which that's the entire reason I'm here in social media, is to kind of empower you and teach you those tools. So I almost left nursing, but I didn't, thankfully. I decided action. Again, I'm very much an action taker, energy of solutions at all times. We always have more power than we think. Action can be terrifying, but action moves the needle. Action gets you the results that you need, right? And if they're rooted in your own values and your own beliefs and your own feelings about where you want to be, it'll serve you well. So I dove deep into who I was as a person, which again, we'll talk about tonight a little bit. Making space for myself in my life, reconnection with my identity as a human. Like, what did I even like outside of nursing? Like when I graduated my MP program in nursing school, I was like, wait a minute, what hobbies did I like? Is anyone still around? Does anyone still want to hang out with me? Like, what's happening? So it's reconnecting with what that looks like and embracing it and nurturing that and letting that flame kind of grow. And I invested in mentorship. I've had many mentors over my many years of being a nurse practitioner, both at work and just kind of in the personal development world. And through that, my life honestly has transformed. So action can look like a lot of different things, but tonight we are going to be talking about, obviously, how to get fired up and how to identify all these things outside of your role. So we're going to talk about what's your unique fun print, right? So that's my kind of take on fingerprint, right? We all have a unique fun print. It looks different for everybody, and that's okay. But what is it for you? We're going to reconnect with that. What actually fires you up? Like, when was the last time you actually felt like fired up about something and psyched to do something and excited, right? When was the last time you felt that? Have you felt kind of stagnant for a while? And if so, maybe this will be good for you and we can reconnect with that. What do you wish you had more time for? And what are the blocks that truly come up for you? Because those blocks are typically the things that keep us paralyzed. And if we can move through those blocks, then we will be good to go. So again, I think we know the answer to this. This is kind of a rhetorical question, but like, give me a hand tap if you feel like you don't make enough time for fun in your life, right? We like that stuff. We need that in our life, but why does it even really matter? Like, who cares? What's the point? Well, fun is important, right? It boosts that dopamine. It helps our energy levels. It helps our mood. And fun is not a diversion from a successful life. A lot of times we think like, oh, if I can just make it to Friday, like then I'll have fun and then I'll pour into myself and then I'll do all these things. But, we can work fun into our life every single day. It doesn't have to be this huge thing where we're going on vacation or investing all this money and time and energy, but it can be very, very simple. And simple does not mean unimportant at all. So we all have a unique fun print, just like our fingerprints, right? And it's all about unlearning the blocks and learning what fun really looks like to you. So what is our fun print, right? Our fun print is a pattern of activities that we most enjoy. So that can be anything. Again, like some of us, like my husband loves to go rock climbing. I like to go rock climbing, but that's not my passion. Some people love to go fishing or boating or do crafts or whatever, sing, play music. We all have things and activities in our life that bring us a lot of joy. And a lot of times we really don't make enough time for those things in our life. So what are those things in your life that make you come alive, that make you smile, that really light you up, that give you energy on those bad days? You do them and you're like, oh man, this just totally transformed my day and completely transformed my mood. right? And a lot of times, again, we feel guilty for doing those things. Like we feel like we're being selfish or doing something that we shouldn't be doing because we have so many other things to do on our to-do list. But the reality is the to-do list is always going to be there, and self-care is the first thing to go. So when you look back on your life, how are you going to measure your life, right? We always think of like success, and as nurses and nursing professionals, we're so high achieving. We always kind of want to achieve and do and be well respected and have all these kind of initials after our name and all the things. But at the end of the day, when you're old and gray and you're sitting on your front porch, like, what does success really look like to you? Like, what will you measure your life by at the end of the day? Is it all the initials after your name? Probably not, right? It's about connection. It's about having joy in your life, having love, connection, fun. There's all these things that really are what life is all about. And yeah, we should love our jobs too, but we should not live to work, right? We should actually have a life outside of our job, in my humble opinion. So when it comes to your to-be list and your to-do list, so this is something I talk about mentorship a lot. So we actually start mentorship with this very topic is, first of all, we all have a to-do list. Like we all have clothes on right now. So we have laundry to do. There's always things to do. It's never like you just check those boxes off and you're done. You can be like, okay, cool. To-do list is done. Moving on. I'm just going to go like chill now. No, there's always things to do, right? We've all added something on the bottom of our to-do list because it wasn't on there, right? Like, oh, I just vacuumed. It wasn't on there. I'm going to get the credit though. Beep, right? Hand taps 100%. So we are all box checkers. I know it because we are all achievers. We're all this kind of like personality that we love to check those boxes. But where are you on your to-do list? When you write out that to-do list, where are you? Where is your self-care? Where is your joy? Where is your happiness? Where is the space for you in your life is the question. When you write out your to-do list, which I know some of you love to do, I like to do it too. When you're done, look at it and say, where am I? You should be at the top. Whether you're a parent or whatever role you are in healthcare, you should be at the top of your to-do list. And there should be space for you in your life. And it should hopefully be scheduled in there somewhere so that it actually happens. Because again, there's always things to do. And if you focus on the doing, that self-care, the being will get left behind. And you will ultimately suffer as a result of that. And burnout will kind of slowly creep in on the sidelines. And we don't need that. So self-care is really about saying yes to the things that bring you joy and setting healthy boundaries with your time and energy so that the things that drain you, those energy vampires in your life, the work stuff, the emotional burden that your jobs have on you and your life, they don't get to take that away. Like you get to have joy in your life. You get to do these things. And ultimately, you get to choose where those lines are in the sand and where boundaries can be drawn so that you can have these other things in your life. And yes, there's barriers. Believe me, that's a whole nother talk, right? The fear, the guilt, the shoulds, all these things come up, especially if you're a parent, those things will come up. But at the end of the day, you get to choose. You get to choose. And healthy boundaries are really good. And I'm telling you, boundaries in and of themselves are the best burnout repellent that exists. Hands down. And I know that from experience. Hands down. And we'll talk about that a little bit tonight. So fun print essentials, here we go. So fun print essentials. We've got a couple that we're going to talk about tonight, but the first is boundaries. And I think a lot of us, we hear that word and we're like, oh my gosh, like this makes me so uncomfortable. Like boundaries freak me out. Like they feel so socially threatening, don't they? You know, when you think about like putting up a boundary with your family or friends or your job, you're like, oh, good. Like they're going to hate me. They're going to never invite me to that party ever again. You know, it feels very socially threatening and scary and all these things come up. And none of us love confrontation, I feel like. So it can be challenging, but there's a lot of tricks to move through that. So what comes up for you when you guys think about boundary setting? Like, is there anything that makes you uncomfortable? Do you love them? And you're like, I love boundaries. Let's go. Like, what do you think when you think of boundaries? You can put it in the comments. Yeah, super hard to start the convo. Yes, 100%. And there's definitely a lot of strategies around that, especially when you're working with new people. Yeah, again, it's very socially threatening, but something that I always tell my mentees is, which is better, having a hard conversation or having a hard life? Maybe that's tough love, but it's true. Boundaries at the end of the day are just a limit. That's all they are. They can seem scary. And why do we have limits? It's because we as human beings have limited resources. Yeah, also what's in bounds and what's pushing in boundaries too far. Yeah, and the hard part is, right, a lot of that is rooted in that fear or nervousness about like whether we're offending people. Like typically it's not too far. It's just a matter of asserting yourself in a way that's professional without being pushy. But there's definitely a lot of scripting around that. It's a whole nother talk. Maybe connect around. We can do another talk about boundaries. So boundaries are just the limit. And why do we have limits? It's because we have limited resources. So there's capacity and there's capability. You guys are super capable. You are super smart, very good at what you do. You are very good in school, right? We're box checkers. We like to check those boxes, but we all have a capacity, right? I always like to compare it to like a purse. I know this is like a weird metaphor, but it works. So you have a purse. It's like this really like high quality leather. It's a very capable bag, right? It can hold a lot of stuff. There's a nice zipper. Like you got everything in there. You got all your stethoscope, all your books, everything's in there. But it has a capacity. Even though that capable bag, that leather bag is super strong and that zipper is solid, there's going to be a point where it's overflowing and the zipper breaks and maybe the strap breaks because it's too heavy, right? So we are all very capable, but we all have a breaking point and there is a capacity. So it's about knowing what your capacity is and where your limits are and putting those boundaries in place, even if they sound kind of scary. They're just an allocation of your resources. They are not an emotional exchange. They may feel like that, and other people may make you feel guilty for setting them. But those people and that feeling that they are putting onto you is exactly why you need to set the boundary in the first place. Because no boundaries equals they will exploit you and they will have you do more until you're pushed to your limit. And that's a driver of burnout. And that's something that we really need to pay attention to. This is something I personally feel we should talk about in school. I wish that I knew more about like what healthy boundaries look like in the nursing world, because that was 100% why. I mean, there were a couple other things, but it was a very big reason why I burned out in my first job, was because I didn't listen to those signals in my own being, because I was a people pleaser. I was nervous. Like I wanted people to think I was a really good nurse. I wanted to be the doer and the box checker, because that's kind of where I got the positive reinforcement from other people. But at the end of the day, like we can't sacrifice our own peace for the needs of other people. Okay, so what are we unlearning? So again, these can be very socially threatening. So personally, we are learning the whole idea that we are responsible when it comes to boundary setting. Again, we're talking about boundaries. So when we're talking about boundaries, the idea that we are responsible for others' thoughts, their experiences, their feelings about things, that is something that typically we are conditioned from a very, very young age, like even in childhood, right? So no, don't do that. You don't want to upset them. Like make sure you kind of toe the line. So this is something that we have to unlearn over time. Also, it's my job to anticipate the thoughts, the feelings, the experiences of other people and be the most accommodating version of myself, right? So that is kind of what we feel in our jobs oftentimes, is that we need to anticipate that, but also kind of sacrifice our own things that we need to do, the things that we want to be, all the things in the whatever that looks like for you. We also look at obedience and availability. We often associate that with love and respect, right? So if we are the obedient one, the available one, and oftentimes we receive messages from other people in our life about that, like, you're so reliable. Thank you so much. I can always count on you. Right? That feeds into that exact thing where we feel love and respect because we're available and that we are the one that they can always rely on. But that can actually be super toxic if it goes too far and it becomes, you really have to be tuned into these things and these messages in your own life. And oftentimes to restrict availability, so like, oh, I'm unavailable, I'm sorry, I can't do that for you today, sometimes feels like restricting love and not getting that respect. And we fear disappointing other people or not being the team player or not being the person that people want to be around. And then professionally, and again, the personal stuff can blend into this like professional world as well. I kind of separated it out, but really like there is some blend. Professionally, availability and sacrifice are more admirable than doing your job well. And what I mean by that is, again, oftentimes we take on so many things. We're doing, we're like bringing in all these extra projects. Like people ask us to join a committee or do something else. And we're like, sure. Work extra shifts. Sure. But at the end of the day, that can actually really sacrifice your own ability to do your job well because you're exhausted, right? Maybe your focus isn't great. You're not thinking clearly. You're not sleeping well. There's all these things that can come up when we overextend ourselves, and burnout is just one of those. And burnout, again, we know can involve that kind of disconnection from your role and that apathy. And a lot of times, and we know because there's data to show us that apathy and the burnout itself does affect patient outcomes. It doesn't mean you're a bad person at all. It's just we know that when we overextend ourselves and we're sleep deprived and we're all these things, like it does mean we don't do our job as well. So it's better to tend to our needs so that we can tend to the needs of others in a way that we feel good about. Again, professionally, so other people's time, their job, deadlines, etc., are more important than our own needs. So a lot of times people are like, oh, like, hey, I really need this done, or like, I really need you to do X, Y, Z. Can you help me with this? And a lot of times, again, because for a lot of reasons, but a lot of times it's just we want to be the helper. Like we want to be the doer. We want to be the person they can rely on. We will sacrifice our own peace for the needs of others. And that can be a very slippery slope. And of course, there's times where, you're going to assess your capacity and you're going to say to yourself, like, I actually do have the capacity for this right now. So I will do this because it is nice to help. And it is nice to be that person that people can rely on. That's a good feeling. And it's a good thing, right? Nurses need to support nurses. But if it is at the sacrifice of your own peace, then it's a problem. So again, professionally, we're unlearning it's better to suffer silently and angrily kind of rage quit 8 months later than just to have a hard conversation. And I think that's kind of what you guys were saying in the comments, right? Like sometimes having those conversations that are tough can be really, really scary. But sometimes they need to happen in order for you to feel more at peace, more respected, more supported in your role. I've had many mentees where their support and their ability to have people like resources and all the things like at their job are really horrendous, especially as a new grad. And it's one of those things, it's like, it's really uncomfortable to ask for support and ask for resources, but that's the way to do it, right? We've got to put ourselves out there. We've got to self-advocate. We've got to ask for what we need. At the end of the day, if they say absolutely not, there's no way, sorry, like have a nice day. Okay. Right. And then that tells you something about the role that you're in and the job that you're in. And maybe it's a toxic work environment. But if we don't ask for what we need and we don't self-advocate, like we won't ever get it. Right. We have to put ourselves out there because it's like the job, right? If you don't if you don't apply to the job, of course you're not going to get it because you never applied in the first place. You got to put yourself out there and do the scary thing. And that action taking is how we get results. It's how we get what we want. Right. But that fear and guilt and all these things hold us back. And that's where we kind of get paralyzed. But I'm telling you, when you move through that fear, that's when you're unstoppable. Even when it's scary, it gets easier because fear and moving through it and celebrating those wins and getting the hard jobs and doing the thing and seeing that you can actually do it and take action and like you don't burst into flames and it's okay. That's so great for your confidence. You're going to feel so empowered, and it really makes a huge difference. So action taking is where it's out, even when it's scary. And a lot of times that fear, if you really think about it, is just excitement. If you breathe into it and take a hot second to just think, you're just psyched, right? Even with a scary interview, you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm so scared, da 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 da. You're just kind of pumped because it's like, okay, oh my gosh, this is like a new opportunity. Like, what is this new role going to look like? Who am I going to meet? It's just excitement. It's just we have to kind of reframe what those emotions are. It's not a bad thing to be scared, but it's good to think through it and what that actually means for you. So the last thing is that we unlearn that people will think we're lazy. That's a big one, right? People, oh my gosh, if I don't say yes, they're going to think I'm such a lazy, I'm not a hard worker, I'm not good at my job. My gosh, they're going to think I'm a terrible human being. It's a big one, right? But that's not true at all. Again, it goes back to capacity. So if you think of it like that, capacity versus capability, sure, you got it. You're so capable. Of course you could do it. You're not lazy. You're a hard worker. And when you look at the evidence in your life that shows you that you're a hard worker, right? That's just a limiting belief. That's not a real, that's fiction. That's not fact. You're a super hard worker. And you look at all the evidence in your life to support that. You graduated school, you did XYZ, whatever hard work that you can see in your lifetime, you're gonna be like, wait a minute, no. I'm a hard worker. I just don't have the capacity for this time, and that's okay. So that's where you reframe it. And again, if people in your life or in your job make you feel guilty about, again, protecting your own peace, then that may be a toxic environment and a toxic relationship because you are willing to work hard, right? But you're not willing to work yourself to burn out or to sacrifice your own mental health or any of that type of stuff for the needs of other people, right? So that's important. So yeah, Bernard's like, yeah, I'm telling you, it's important. So again, our identity is so tied into this. And this, again, a lot of times these are messages we receive from childhood. So, my gosh, you're so selfless. You are so selfless. You're so reliable. I don't know what I would do without you, really. Oh my gosh, like I would not even know what to do, right? Makes you feel like really needed. But the problem is those types of messages that you get from people, and sometimes it's not like an intentional malicious thing. It's just people send you these messages because they're like, wow, you're my rock. But then we feel guilt if we're unavailable, which ultimately we are unavailable at times. Maybe we don't say that we are. And again, we push ourselves beyond those limits. We don't set those boundaries, right? We go beyond that capacity. Exhaustion, resentment, frustration. Resentment's a huge one, right? Oh, I wish they would just stop asking me because I can never say no. You can't say no. You can't say no. You feel that obligation to help. And if your identity has always been tied into this like reliable person at the price of your own peace, it's going to feel super selfish for you to prioritize something other than that, right? It's going to feel really uncomfortable for you. It's like, oh gosh, I feel so guilty. Especially, I think it's like, especially for parents who are healthcare workers, right? Or someone who's caring for like a family member who's unwell, like you have obligations to your family in other ways. It can feel really uncomfortable, right? And again, then we're like, ooh, this feels so uncomfortable. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it. It'll be fine. I'll do it. Right? Because we're willing to sacrifice our own peace for the needs, the feelings, and the experiences of other human beings. But we have a capacity. So when you feel that and you feel like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it. Even though is check in with yourself, right? That self-awareness piece is huge. So check in and say to yourself, like, do I have the capacity for this right now? If I do this, what am I going to feel? Like, how's this going to be for me as a result of this? How's my week going to look? Right? And also asking yourself, like, what am I scared of? What am I afraid of by saying no? Right? And knowing whether or not that thing that you're scared of is fact or fiction. Because a lot of times our brains just want to keep us safe. It's not real. Right? Oh my gosh, they're going to hate me. Are they though? Are they really going to hate you? I don't think so. And if they do, are they really a good friend? So ask yourself, is this fact or fiction? And sometimes that can really help guide you in your decision making and your ability to set those really healthy boundaries so that you can have more fun and, again, do the things outside of your job and live more than you work, right? And when I say that, I mean too, like these other things that we give to other humans, even outside of work, because that's not inherently filling your cup. Like your cup needs to be filled and overflowing, and all that overflow goes to other people. But you need to fill that capacity. You need to get to here and then give the rest to other people. So again, these things can look like overcommitment, right? We do too much. We have too many things going on. We have too many things to do and not enough time to ourselves. And again, burnout, which we all know so well. So the other fun print essential is energy. So again, one of our blocks when we're like, oh, I want to have fun is, but I'm so tired. We all feel that, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. Right? It's hard to have fun and do stuff when you're tapped out. Like sometimes like your friends are like, come on, let's go do X, Y, Z. You're like, I'm just too tired. I can't do it. Sorry. All right. So that's definitely a block. Anyone feel that? You can put like, yes. Yeah, exactly. Yes in the comments. So again, it's looking back at your capacity. We can't sacrifice ourselves for other humans. We can't look at others to determine our worth, and we can't keep putting our needs aside for the needs of other human beings. So we're going to talk a little bit about boosting your energy. So Magda asks, what advice would you give to someone who's dealing with imposter syndrome? And that's a great question. So there's my favorite way to deal with imposter syndrome is actually to every day, literally every single day after you leave your job, is to sit in your car before you even go home. And I want you to think about one thing, doesn't have to be 10 things, but I want you to think of something that you did really, really well, right? Celebrate a win, celebrate those wins. That is so essential for boosting confidence. And because we're always so quick to say like, oh my God, I'm so bad at this. Like, who am I to even work here? I don't know anything, right? That imposter syndrome kind of like our little gremlin tells us that, but we know so much more than we think, and we're doing so much better than we think. So think about, instead of those things, oh my gosh, I didn't give Mr. Brown this, or I didn't do this well enough. Think about the things that you did really well, or something that you learned that day that was awesome. And that will help propel you forward. I would also encourage you to speak to someone with more experience, like in your unit, who's an ally, and just talk to them about it. Like, hey, when you were new, like, how'd you feel? Because like, I'm kind of feeling like really like that I'm not good enough, or whatever it looks like for you, however that imposter syndrome is showing up for you. And it can be so empowering to speak to other people on your unit because they've all been there. They've all been there. And they'll be like, oh my gosh, look, I totally feel you. And we can't compare our day 0 or our day 20 to someone else's day 100, right? It's easy to look at the other people on our unit and say like, oh my God, they have it all figured out. They've been doing it a lot longer, and I guarantee you they don't have it all figured out, like 100%. So I would say like celebrate your wins on the regular, like make it autopilot, right? Every single day before you even leave your car. And if you want to write them down, that's even better, because like on those really tough days, when you leave work, you're like, oh my God, what a nightmare day. Like, I can't even believe I made it through that day. This was so awful. And you just want to like cry in your car. You can bring out your little notebook and read all those wins that you had for the rest of the week. And you can be like, you know what? Today was a crappy day, but this does not define me. Like, I'm really good at my job. Like, I had all these wins all week, and I'm actually really good at what I do. Today was just a crappy day. It doesn't mean a crappy life. It doesn't mean I'm a crappy nurse. So that would be my suggestion. Hopefully that's helpful for you. So how do we get more energy? There's a lot of ways. But I like, again, kind of looking at the root of the root. So like, what are your energy vampires? And energy vampires are just those things in your life that just suck the life out of you. So that can look like a lot of different things to a lot of different people. You know, maybe it's like your actual schedule isn't working for you, or you're working nights and you absolutely hate it. Or, you know, there's a toxic colleague that you're dealing with, or you're a parent and you feel like you have no space for you in your life, or you, whatever it looks like for you. But think about Like do kind of an energy audit, if you will. I do this with my mentees. Like you look at like where are your energy levels at? And when your energy levels are super, super low or like really good, like what's going on? Like what's going on around you? How, like, is it your flip day? Is it your work day? Like what does your actual life look like when you're feeling those ways? And kind of think about where you can maybe set a boundary or where you can do more of the things that make you feel empowered and energized and happy versus the things that make you feel depressed and low energy and kind of at home feeling logy. I also want to point out that when it comes to energy in general, you know, we often think of low energy as a bad thing, right? We think like, oh, you're so low vibe, like low vibe, high vibe. So it's not that simple. Like you can have positive and negative of low vibe or high vibe. So for example, if I'm low vibe, but it's a positive thing, I'm just feeling content, calm, relaxed, at ease, right? I'm low vibe, but it's a good thing. And then there's low vibe, that's maybe not so good, right? Depressed, apathetic, flatlined, just meh, right? And then there's the opposite. So you can feel high vibe and positive. So that's things like, I'm energized. I'm like, whoop, whoop, let's go, let's go. But then there's like high vibe and negative, which is the fight or flight, adrenaline, feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm so anxious, like feeling kind of like you're crawling out of your skin. And that's kind of a negative, quote unquote, feeling. So when you think of high vibe, low vibe, keep in mind, like it's cool to be low vibe if you're content. Content's not a bad place to be. Content can be really good. You know, we don't always have to be kind of like, whoop, whoop, right? We can just be chill. So energy boosters, energy vampires. So you guys can think of ones that maybe are unique to you, but some examples here: hobbies, community connection, movement. Movement's a great one, like way to change your state. Like anyone knows if you dance around a little bit or you do a workout, you feel great. Going for a walk, eating really healthful foods, hydrating, coffee's great, but in moderation, of course. Good sleep, supportive work environment, things like that are energy boosters. Energy vampires can look like burnout, too much mindless scrolling, right? Like sometimes you do that scrolling, you're just like, oh my God, I don't even know where the last hour went. It doesn't like, it's just like, like what? That doesn't feel good. Toxic people, toxic work environments, I know, believe me, we're all guilty of that. But you know, anytime I like wake up the next day, I'm like, why do I feel terrible? It's usually because I've been on my phone late night. I'm telling you, tune into that. I'm telling you, it makes a big difference. So not taking a break, nourishing your body, poor work-life balance. And again, like work-life balance is more like work-life integration. It's never going to be perfect, right? Too much booze, too much junk food, kind of sedentary lifestyle. Those can make you feel kind of logy too. So time is another block, right? When you're like thinking of things you want to do for fun, you're like, I'm going to have so much fun. Oh, I don't have time. I don't have time. How many times have you guys said that to yourself? I'm telling you, I would want to bet that you have said that to yourself before. Oh, I would work out, but I just don't have time. I would start reading again, but I just don't have time to do that. All right. But here's the deal. Tough love. I love you, but you do have time. It's about where we're prioritizing our time. I guarantee you, and again, this is what I do with my mentees, we do a time audit, right? And look at actually where your time is going. I'm telling you, it's a little bit of a rude awakening, but it allows you to look at where your time is actually going and ask yourself, like, does this serve me or does it not? Like, is this where I want my time to be going? Like, we all have the same amount of hours in the day, right? Oprah and you have the same amount of hours in the day. Like, she may have a personal chef, but still, yeah, I really love reading, but it's true. I don't have time for it now. I guarantee you do have time. It's, you know, and sometimes we think too, like with reading, for example, like I had a mentee just this week, we were talking about this, like, you don't have to read the whole book in one sitting. Like you can say to yourself, like, okay, I'm going to read 10 pages today, right? You can start small and then you just master the art of showing up for yourself and getting these little habits in place and finding little snippets of time in your day where it works for you. And then you can build upon it. And a lot of times the hard part is just getting started. If you can get yourself started, the majority of us are going to keep going, right? So if you tell yourself, I'm just going to like do this for 2 minutes, like even like cleaning. Sometimes I do this to fold laundry because I hate folding laundry. Okay, I'm just going to do it for 2 minutes, then I can get it done. Or like if I'm kind of like in a mood and I want to do something active because I know it's going to like boost my energy, make me feel better ultimately, like, all right, I'm just going to go for a walk for like 5 minutes in the yard. A lot of times once I get out there and get my shoes on, get outside, I'm just going to go down the street and go for a walk, right? So it's about kind of mastering the art of showing up and prioritizing things and having like a little mindset shifts, little tricks to get your brain going. But again, time, it's so complicated, right? Because again, there's ways that we can delegate to other people. We can automate things. We can eliminate things from our life that we don't want. And we can set boundaries. So we can say no. We can say yes, but XYZ. We can ask for what we need from our partners. We can ask for what we need at work, right? But it's about deciding that we're worthy and letting go of the guilt and saying, like, I'm worthy of this time. I need this time, right? The power of a simple walk is amazing. You're so right. Exactly. And it's so good for your mental health, but it's also good for your body. It's good for all of it. And I think too, like these little things that we do, even if it's like a little walk or reading 10 pages, it's such a beautiful act of self-love and self-compassion. And it makes us feel nurtured. A lot of like that resentment and things like that, it comes from feeling like we're left behind. So these little things that we can do for ourselves, it doesn't have to be a spa day or like a trip to Italy. Cool, if you want to do that, awesome. But it can look like a walk down the street. It can look like pouring yourself a cup of tea and reading 10 pages of a book. You know, it can look like being a little bit more mindful with your skincare and just like massaging your face a little more than you would. And it felt really, really good. So there's a lot of ways to work in self-love and self-compassion into your day. And it doesn't really need to take that much time. It's just about prioritizing it. And again, telling ourselves that we are 100% worth it, which we are. You're 100% worth it. And again, like planning out your week can be really helpful. So sometimes, like if you just plan it into your world, even if it's just like sometimes, honestly, I don't know what I want to do with my me time, but like I have it kind of set aside in my schedule and I just label it D time. Like it's D time. So that day, if I'm like, okay, cool, I've got this hour, like I'm just gonna, like I really want to do whatever. Sometimes it involves like calling my mom and talking to her because I really like to, and that, you know, again, involves another human being, but it is bringing me joy, you know? So it can look like whatever you want it to look like. And sometimes creating that space for your life, in your life for you, involves having a conversation with another human being. So whether it be your partner and asking for what you need or asking for that time, or your job, you know, switching up your schedule or saying no to extra shifts or whatever. So ask yourself this, like when you look at your week or you look at your life and you get off this call and you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, think to yourself, what would you need to create more time for yourself? Like, what would you actually need? Like, I would love for you to kind of like brain dump or journal on that because it's actually really powerful because sometimes it's not super complicated. Like sometimes it just, I need to just do it. You know, you just need to prioritize you. Sometimes it's, again, having a difficult conversation with someone and asking for what you need and saying like, hey, you know, I need 20 minutes when I get home from work just to have a little quiet time. And that's okay. Like we're allowed to ask for what we need. If we don't ask, people can't read our minds, you know? So it's okay. So when we look at our bliss list, so once you kind of create that space for you in your life, like we create our bliss list. So our bliss list is those activities that really your unique fun print, if you will, that fill your cup, that make you feel happy, right? The times in your life where you laugh the hardest or felt just so joyful. What makes you feel relaxed? What makes you laugh? What do you actually desire? What do you feel? What do you want to feel? And what is step one to get there? That is something I tell my mentees all the time. That's like my favorite post-shift reflection is what do you feel in that moment? What do you want to feel? And what's step one to get there? Sometimes it's not super complicated. And that can be super powerful. What are your hobbies? If you're like, I don't know, I haven't done hobbies in years. I remember when I graduated from school, I was like, wait, hobbies, friends, hello, is anyone around still? So sometimes you look at maybe the things you used to do as a kid. Like I was always like into crafting, like super crafty. Yeah, I'm not going to like paint pottery now, but there's ways that I can bring creativity into my adult life, right? I always loved the outdoors. Like I would play flashlight tag and stuff like that. Like there's ways to incorporate the outdoors into your life if that's something that means something to you. So think about that. And for some of us, our childhood is a painful place to visit. But for many, even amongst that discomfort, you can still find little things that used to bring you some joy. And it's about finding those things and experimenting and trying new things and putting yourself out there and just see what feels good. Like I had a mentee who was like, I've always wanted to take a woodworking class. And I was like, girl, do it. Try it out. She did it. She's like, this is amazing. And she made a table. She's like, I made the coolest end table. So it's about putting yourself out there. You never know what you're going to like. And if you don't like it, that's cool. Try something else. See what feels good. You'll never know unless you put yourself out there. And hey, maybe you'll meet someone cool. You never know. So you guys can screenshot this. I don't think we really have time to do it now, but a little exercise for you to do is to get a piece of paper and make 2 columns. One is like joy activity. So the thing that you enjoy doing, whatever that looks like for you. Again, without judgment, without like, oh, well, no, just put it on there. If it's something that you think brings you joy, cool. And then on the other column, have it, and it makes me feel. Because I think it's very important to think about how these things make you feel. Because when you do that post-shift reflection, right, where you're like, what do I feel? What do I want to feel? And what's step 1 to get there? Knowing what you feel and what you want to feel, and knowing what these types of activities elicit for you in terms of a feeling allows you to think about like, oh, wow, I know that running makes me feel energized. And if you feel super like after work, very like apathetic and exhausted, but you really want to feel energized. I mean, maybe you don't. Maybe you're like, no, I just want to chill. But whatever that looks like for you, then you can look at these joy activities and see like, okay, of these activities, what would tend to what I need right in this moment, right? And it's that self-awareness piece that is so, so, so important. Like we need to check in with ourselves, right? We're just so on this autopilot of serving others. But at the end of the day, we really need to check in on ourselves and just see what we need. Our needs don't have to be neglected. Like we need to have our needs met as well. And sometimes that doesn't look like anything extravagant, right? It could just be like sometimes I've literally after work driven to the ocean and sat in my car for 5 minutes and just done some breathing. Then I'm like, okay, I think I'm good. Super simple. Brings me a lot of joy. And then when I come home, my kids are like, oh, I need this, I need that. Oh. I'm not like, oh my God. Oh. Right? I have a little bit more bandwidth. My capacity has increased because of that. So just think about that. It's a good one. So obviously, again, we didn't have time to do this now, but when you do that, think to yourself, like when you write those things down, tune in to what makes you smile as you're writing it down. Because that may be a hint to you that that's something really important that you're not making time for that actually is really important to you, that brings you a lot of joy. So when you write those things down, ask yourself, how often are you doing them? And how often do you actually want to be doing them? And see if it's in alignment. If you do it a couple times a year and you really want to be doing it once a month, there's a disconnect. So think about that. So if you don't put yourself first, you are letting others know that you can wait. I'm going to read that again because this is important. If you don't put yourself first, you are letting others know that you can wait, and you will wait, right? Every time you put your own happiness first, you are casting a vote for your more joyful, confident, and empowered self. And that person is far better equipped to show up authentically for others. It's so true, right? If we keep tending to the needs of others, by default, a lot of people, unfortunately, will continue to use that to their advantage. So it's on you to take action. It's on you to assess your capability and your capacity and where you're at, right? Check in with yourself and see what's there, what you feel you can, what you can't do. where your limits are, where those boundaries need to be set, and then put yourself first, knowing that you are worthy of whatever that looks like. Whatever that looks like for you, you are 100% worthy of it. And taking that step forward, that uncomfortable conversation, that uncomfortable boundary, whatever it is, right? Because if you don't, you will wait. It's just a fact. So this is another exercise for you to take with you after this. And you can, again, totally screenshot. This is like just a kind of little prompt for you. So if I embodied the energy of my higher self, who's kind, confident, and successful in all the ways that I desire, what is one next step that I would take to move forward? And what would I believe about myself? How would I speak to myself? And how would I care for myself? These are really important questions. So I very much encourage you to take a look at that after this session's over and just reflect on it. You know, when you think of the you that you want to show up as, right? You're more like, whatever that is, your highest self, right? Whatever that looks like for you. How does he or she stand? How do you command a room? How do you speak? Like, who are you at your like best? And are you showing up as that person? And maybe what are the things that you need to do for yourself to show up as that person? What would you have to believe about yourself? How would you speak to yourself, and how would you nurture yourself? How would you care for yourself? These are really important. So I want to hear from you. So please tell me what your biggest takeaway from this talk was. If you're watching the replay, you can definitely message me on Insta. I love hearing from you guys at Catalyst for Self-Care, but I would love to hear you just unmute yourself, share with the group, like what was something that you learned tonight? I see, and you can put in the chat too. So it's okay to be selfish and ask for what we need. Yes. Yeah, and a lot of times like this like selfish word like makes us feel so uncomfortable, right? Like selfish is not a bad thing. Self-love and self-compassion are selfish, but that's a good thing. Like we deserve that. Yeah, so asking for what we need is so huge. I love that. Anything else? Any other takeaways? Start simple. Yes. Small does not mean unimportant. Small acts have a huge impact. That's right. Doesn't have to cost money. I can create time for my needs. Yes, you definitely can. 100%. I love that. Love that you declared that. It's so true. Yeah, and just, you know, after the call, like think about where you're spending your time and see where you fit into your life. That to-do list, like where are you on your to-do list? It gets to be fun. Like that's the end of the day. Like it gets to be fun. Life gets to be fun. Your free time gets to be fun. Like you get to make it fun. Doesn't need to suck. Like we have a lot more control and more power over our life than we think. There's just these blocks, you know? It really gets to be fun. You know, how are we going to measure our life at the end? Is it all those boxes we checked? No. Like I remember way back, I checked all those boxes. I was like, had an internship, post whatever, like got the job, did this, did that, got the master, all the things, right? Was I happy? No. No, it's not about the boxes at all. Feels good to check the box. It's that dopamine hit. But at the end of the day, it's about nurturing and caring for yourself and putting yourself first. So anywho, so does anyone have any questions? This is how you can find me. There's a ton of free resources on my website. So selfcarecatalyst.com. And then obviously on Insta is where I hang. But really, guys, anytime you feel you want support, like my community is a very safe space. I firmly believe we are stronger together. We are not meant to do life or nursing alone. So if you ever need anything, it's a very much judgment-free zone and I'm very accessible. So I really am thankful that you came and you listened tonight. Hopefully you got some things from it. And if you have any questions, definitely let me know.